Hi, welcome to episode 84 of Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. In this episode, you were going to hear me talk about overthrowing education, Microsoft Edge, innovation on the edge, the Tom Schimmer show. What else did I talk about? And there's a couple other segments that are included in here, and so you're gonna have to listen and follow along. Well, this is a shorter episode because Friday morning got cut short because I had a spontaneous trip up country to go fishing, and I left early, so I didn't get the podcast recorded and even released on Friday like I usually do. So I had a fantastic weekend. It was great. And without further ado, let's jump into episode 84 of Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. Here we go.
I'm Anne, co-host of Transparency in Teaching, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. I'm your host, Brian Carpenter. Fresh Air at 5 is my regular attempt to exercise by walking about my neighborhood to take in podcast content, then reflect in an unedited video, which I finally post to my Twitter channel. This podcast will be a regular collection of the audio from these selfie videos. You can follow me on Twitter at FreshAir@5 or check out my website, briancarpenter.com, for other content I have created and collected. Hey, PLN, August 8, 2022. Happy Monday. Welcome to this week and the top of episode 84 of Fresh Air 5, the podcast. So this morning as I'm out walking, I had to get up and get my son out of bed. He was sleeping in. So I got him out of bed so he can get off to work, and I got out the door before 5. So yes, it's all good. I'm happy to be here, and it's probably plus 15 degrees Celsius right now. And we've been in a warm state here in British Columbia. Yesterday was, I think, 32 degrees with high humidity. But you know, it's summertime. It's feeling great. Doing fun things. Went to the air show on Friday night with my son. Enjoyed the sunset and all the airplanes and acts that were going on. Had outdoor movie on Saturday night. And then last night, I sat in the yard and ate ice cream with my wife as we watched the sun go down. So it was fantastic. Tied some flies, getting ready to go on a fishing trip. Okay, as I'm walking, I listened to episode 80 of Overthrowing Education with Batsheva Frankel. And good morning, Batsheva. Glad to hear your voice. And going back to the vault to go get a story and a podcast episode from episode 3 of Overthrowing Education in celebration of 3 years of your podcast. Congratulations to you. That's fantastic. And the episode that you dug out was with Michaela Bly, the pedagogy of story framing and how we can use story in our classroom to as a project-based learning framework, not the framework exactly, but the story around doing something and about exploring things and how we can have story. So story is important, but having a deep enough story that allows you to do many different activities that are the normal things and connect them to this problem are important. So I really liked what I heard, and people, take a listen to this episode because it'll inspire you. I've got some ideas about how to do digital citizenship and some media stuff with my media design class this year because of this. All right, happy Monday. Have a good day. Bye-bye. One more thing for August 8, 2022. The okay bye came too soon at the end of that last bit, and so this is my one more thing about episode 80, which is episode 3 of Overthrowing Education, as Batsheva talks with Michaela Bly about story framing and putting a narrative into a classroom so that the students can dig into that and explore things around that, and you as the teacher take and apply curriculum to this situation and have the kids dig into that. So, McKaylee, thank you so much for your enthusiasm as you talked with Basheva. And I'm going to have to check out Moth Radio and the Moth curriculum about storytelling and seeing how I can use that, because I'm looking at possibly narrative podcast as my students are going to learn about the medium of podcasting this year and how can they tell a story or their story, but not exactly using their own voice or their own names, but make up a character that they tell a story about that's actually about them. Yes, so that's fantastic, inspired. And so how do we tell stories? How is the narrative of our life affecting us as teachers in our classroom? And I like the conversation about boundaries between personal and professional, and what do we bring in and what don't we bring in, and connect the students' learning to stuff. So I talk about my creativity inside the classroom and outside the classroom, and how the tools I use there are so important. And but maybe, I don't know, making it fictitious. I'm working with middle school and secondary students, so I'll have to get creative with some of these things. All right, with that, that's it for this part. Have a happy day, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye. Hey, PLN, Tuesday, August 9, 2022. Happy Tuesday to you. I hope this finds you well. Out for fresh air at 5 this morning. Got out the door at 5 o'clock after having my son get up and get out of bed so he can get to work. And the sky is clear, plus 17 Celsius. And looking forward to my day as I step into a meeting a bit later with Mr. Isaacs and out of New Jersey, and he's going to work with me on some Wakelet concepts and ideas. So that's happening for me at 8 o'clock, having a Google Meet meeting with him so I can do a little PD. He reached out and said, hey, would you like some help? So it's fantastic. Appreciate that. All right, as I'm walking this morning, I listened to episode 789, that's 789 of the Cool Cat Teacher. And I like that number because it's a consecutive number and reminds me of the joke, why did 6 not like 7? Because 7, 8, 9, and that's a nice little dad joker, joke that kids in kindergarten can get, because it's something that's foundational to them about eating. Okay, don't have to explain it. If you explain it, it's not so funny. But on episode 789 of the 10-Minute Teacher podcast with Vicki Davis, Vicki talks with Director of Innovation and Personalized Learning out of the Melville School District, Sadie Lewis. And Sadie brings to us a thought and concept about graphic design and how essential that graphic design is in education. And in your marketing spaces and out in the world, we see graphic design on a regular basis, and it's all over the place. It's right there on my hat. It's all around us, and how we use graphics and words to communicate messages and storytell. So this is something that's pretty passionate of mine. I'm really big on it. And this episode with Sadie Lewis, Sadie drops some fantastic resources on her website and a Wakelet that I got to get my hands on, and just ways of teaching graphic design to kids and students. So take a listen. If you're interested in graphic design, I like the way she talks about it. You should listen too. Talk to you soon. Bye. One more thing for August 9, 2022, as I'm out still walking, it's still beautiful. I listened to a New to Me podcast, and I was looking for some Microsoft educator content because, I'm going to be a Microsoft educator as our district is changing from Google to Microsoft 365, and I need to step into that. So I was looking, and I found a podcast called Innovation on the Edge with Microsoft Edge, and Chelsea, I'm not sure if her last name, is the host of the podcast, at least for this episode. Not sure if she is all the time, but she talks with Whitney Phillips, who is a songwriter, and about being creative and writing songs in our world today regarding in context of the pandemic, and how the pandemic has provided a different kind of space for communication and collaboration and quiet creativity and what we have gone through with the quarantine and all those kinds of things. Whitney Phillips wrote the song that Justin Bieber, and I think it is Ariana, I don't know because I don't listen to Justin Bieber, but about Stuck Together, and I think that's what it's called. And it's curious to me listening to this because it's all about taking and being opportunistic in a moment of time that provides, a launching pad for something or things like that. Okay, how does this fit with what I'm listening to and me as an educator? Well, I think as an educator, we need to be aware of what's going on outside of the classroom so that we can add some of that to inside the classroom. As I teach media design, I need to focus on, things that are, how do we market maybe something? Like, how do we market our school yearbook? How do we market and put branding on our school newsletter so that it's evident that it's from our school and it has some stick? Yeah, I'm listening to this because it's outside my wheelhouse and it's really good. So take a listen to Microsoft on the Edge and the one with Whitney Phillips. All right, thanks. Bye. The last thing for Thursday, August 11, 2022, I just listened to Josh Stamper talk with Elijah Carbajal on Aspire to Lead podcast, and that was a great listen. So take a listen to that for yourself. And as I was listening, I learned of a new podcast to me called Shut Up and Teach with Elijah Carbajal. So Elijah, I just took a listen to your most recent episode that you had with David Knott, who is the music director and teacher at the Melva Hershey Middle School in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And I was inspired by what I heard because I'm not a music teacher, but I enjoy sound and I enjoy hearing music. And tonight, actually, in fact, my wife and I and a couple friends are going to go down to Stanley Park in Vancouver to Theater Under the Stars and see a show called We Will Rock You. So it's a Queen themed musical thing that we're going to go see. I'm super psyched and I love listening to music. So that's a big part of it for me, is just hearing sounds and music. And as we do all these things with podcasting, sound is a part of it. And this fall, I've made a commitment to myself to get into a different kind of media with my students, and that is the audio space and podcasting and putting out content. And how can we make content with audio and turning off the visual stuff so that we can tell a story through just listening. And I'm thinking about getting some blindfolds for my students to wear when we're listening to things so that they can focus more on the listening. I'm not sure how many of them are listeners, and that's the way they learn, but we're going to work on growing that. And so David Knott, I appreciate your thoughts about music and sound and the 5 people that surround you. So I am going to take a look and listen again to that and see who are those 5 people that are around me: mentors, challengers, friends, supporters, things like that. And so take a listen to this episode, an interview with David Knott on Shut Up and Teach podcast with Elijah Carbajal. Have a good day. Bye-bye. The last thing for Thursday, August 11, 2022, I just listened to Josh Stamper talk with Elijah Carbajal on Aspire to Lead podcast, and that was a great listen. So take a listen to that for yourself. And as I was listening, I learned of a new podcast to me called Shut Up and Teach with Elijah Carbajal. So Elijah, I just took a listen to your most recent episode that you had with David Knott, who is the music director and teacher at the Melva Hershey Middle School in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And I was inspired by what I heard because I'm not a music teacher, but I enjoy sound and I enjoy hearing music. And tonight, actually, in fact, my wife and I and a couple friends are going to go down to Stanley Park in Vancouver to Theater Under the Stars and see a show called We Will Rock You. So it's a Queen themed musical thing that we're going to go see. I'm super psyched, and I love listening to music. So that's a big part of it for me, is just hearing sounds and music. And as we do all these things with podcasting, sound is a part of it. And this fall, I've made a commitment to myself to get into a different kind of media with my students, and that is the audio space and podcasting and putting out content. And how can we make content with audio, and turning off the visual stuff so that we can tell a story through just listening. And I'm thinking about getting some blindfolds for my students to wear when we're listening to things, so that they can focus more on the listening. I'm not sure how many of them are listeners, and that's the way they learn, but we're going to work on growing that. And so, David Knott, I appreciate your thoughts about music and sound, and the 5 people that surround you. So I am going to take a look and listen again to that and see who are those 5 people that are around me: mentors, challengers, friends, supporters, things like that. And so take a listen to this episode, an interview with David Knott on Shut Up and Teach podcast with Elijah Carbajal. Have a good day. Bye-bye. As my one word for 2021 is appreciate, I appreciate you giving me a listen as I've created this podcast experience for you. It's a unique Blinkist or Cold Notes version of the content I take in, like a highlight reel, so that you can hopefully find other interesting podcasts you may not have considered before. I've recorded the specific podcast episodes in the show notes for your learning convenience. Please subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming episodes. And if you enjoy this podcast and its format, share it with someone else. Tweet about your experience or give it a review on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Fresh Air at 5 can also be found on Voice Ed Radio. Your voice is right here, and on the Education Podcast Network, Podcasts for Educators, Podcast by Educators. I hope you have a fantastic day and get some fresh air before the day is out, and take care of yourself, because you're worth it.